Hello, everybody. It's Corey Poirier, and I'm back with the experts section of the speaking program. And really excited to have a first-time expert in the program, Gary Loper, who I discovered through Twitter. I mean, I won't try to steal any of Gary's thunder, but I'll probably let him talk about Twitter, and I'm sure we'll talk about his experience with the platform. But Gary, I think probably the best starting point would be to get you to tell us a little bit about your story and or your journey, just for our listeners and viewers who may be discovering you for the very first time.
Wow, it's okay to be able to fit a whole lifetime into it. And, I had a very eclectic background. One of the big transformations for me was about 15 years after graduating from high school, I decided to go to college, in spite of everybody pushing me right afterwards because I didn't know what I wanted to do. But then I saw my uncle have, he was vice president of a company, and then he lost his position in a heartbeat. And at the time I was working factory work, so I just like, I don't want to use my back anymore. So I went got a degree in marketing and sales. And that was kind of really the introduction for me into personal development, because in a public speaking class, I met Tony Robbins and Dennis Waitley through video. And so that really got the hunger going on on what I knew was possible, because I knew I needed help, and it helped me quite a bit. And I know this is something that I wanted to do. We just keep rolling through a number of transformations along the way. And in 2008, I was at a Bob Berg event. He had a weekend workshop, and one of the speakers had mentioned, hey, you got to check out Twitter. And it was brand new. So we get on and, wasn't knowing what to do, and so we're just putzing around with it for quite a while. And then later on that year, I was doing, all the while I was doing work as a massage therapist, working with people with disabilities. And the funding for that program was eliminated. So 90% of my income and 90% of my emotional support had all gone away in a heartbeat. So I got into a funk, and I got stuck into the couch for a while until I, said, okay, well, how am I getting up? And so I had collected a lot of motivational quotes going back to, what is it, 1989, so I started posting those motivational quotes on Twitter, and people started responding. And they, started asking questions, they started thanking me, they're going through all of these other things. And it's like, well, that's when I got that first tap and said, okay, you've been a coach since 1999. You've had this marketing degree since, 1990. You haven't done much with any of those things. So now you're going to start working. You're going to work on Twitter and use this tool as a vehicle to be able to go impact lives. And so we've just continued to be able to grow. And, just every day you just learn something new a little bit and just be able to reach out and touch people's lives in an amazing way.
Wow, Gary, there's so many jump-off points there with the next question, and such a unique path as well. I mean, all three of those names you mentioned from the professional development world, I'm a big fan of. I've had two of three on the show, and one of the things that I heard there when it comes to Twitter and you trying it and saying, what is this thing all about? Because that's one of the things I hear from a lot of people that jump on Twitter for the first time, and the people that probably leave Twitter, it's sad how many of them probably don't get it at first, and maybe if they just stuck around a little bit longer would have went, whoa, now it all makes sense. So can you talk to us, Gary, about what that change was? Because you said there was at least a little point where you were like, how do I use this platform? And then all of a sudden now you're using it regularly to impact lives. Was there a moment or I guess a series of moments that you just kind of went, okay, now I see it?
There was a lot of different points along the way. Just putting the motivational messages out. Like I said, very selfishly, I went out looking to be able to lift my mood up and lift my focus off the couch. So it was a selfish kind of thing. And then, the universe just sort of looked at it and said, okay, so I'm going to touch people's lives. And so we just learned along the way, every day people were remarking, it's just like, hey, thanks for that reminder. This is a good thing. Or they saw me actually interacting with people. There's a lot of stories. Probably one of the most powerful stories a little over 2 years ago, a woman wrote to me and she said, I can never thank you enough for what your tweets have done for me. So I asked her to email me and explain more. And then so she tells me that she's got a debilitating disease and she was contemplating suicide until one of my Just for Today affirmations showed up in her tweet stream.
Wow.
And so she decided to be able to stay and to be able to help others with that disease. Now, this was really a moment for me because it's kind of like the butterfly effect. I had automated those messages. I had no idea when they were going out. It wasn't planned. I didn't sit there, and it just went out and it showed up when she needed it. And so, you just never know, a nod, a wink, a smile, on how it might be able to impact a person's life. And I know that all of those messages are going out are impacting people's lives, whether I know it or not. I think I got to be able to know about this to be able to say, okay, this is one of the things that can happen. So go out and continue to do it.
So, Gary, I mean, there's nothing more powerful than having somebody say that you saved their life. And Twitter, I mean, I think that's a really good case for how big of an impact a person can have if they use, whether it's Twitter or another platform, correctly. But one of the things I hear from people as the challenge is the time necessary to do it. And so, you've become a Twitter influencer, but I know, have also, we've talked about this before, dedicated a lot of time to Twitter as well. So do you have any kind of, when you teach other people how to use Twitter, or, when you look at it today versus in the past, are there, I guess, how often do you tell a person they should kind of expect to spend on Twitter if they want to really, let's say, make a splash or become somebody who gets noticed?
Well, I think when you're first starting, it's like anything else. When you go to a gym, you don't start lifting 400 pounds. So you can't come on Twitter and be able to look at my chapter 9 years and you're just starting. You got to be able to look at and be able to be patient and take time to grow. There's a lot of little things that I've picked up along the way is, don't try to sell anything until you have 2,000 tweets and 2,000 followers, because it just takes you time to be able to get your thoughts down to 100, 120 characters. I really think that if you're on for business, you need to be tweeting about 20 times a day. And I usually get a lot of pushback on 20 times a day. How am I going to do that? And it's like, well, okay, it's not about you. 5 or 7 of those 20 should be retweets. Another 4 or 5 of them should be articles that help position you as an expert. A number of them should be engagement, where you're talking to somebody else, because I look at it, every tweet's an audition. So you may be talking to one person, but there's a lot of other people who are watching. And those people who are watching are the influencers who are going to be able to recommend you to somebody else. So that's even, going back to the suicide story and the affirmations and all of these other things, I look at it as these are differentiation points. There's a lot of other people who are doing the same things that we're doing. But the internet, social media has leveled that playing field where everybody's got the same opportunity. Tony Robbins and I have the same amount of tweet space we can be able to use. So we want to be able to establish our personality, our persona, what differentiates us from everybody else. And that consistency over time is going to be able to attract people to us. As far as the time per day, I think you can be able, while you're first starting, you can do this in 15, 20 minutes a day. You use a tool like Hootsuite or TweetDeck, and you can set up columns of, your mentions, your direct messages, the people who retweet you, and the people you want to retweet. And then you can just scan the columns quickly, and we can show you how to do that in 15 minutes a day. When you first start, so probably only once a day. And then you can be able to, increase it in 15, 20-minute segments to do 2 or 3 times a day when you get up into over 50,000 followers.
Wow. So, Gary, I guess whenever you hear people saying or thinking that they have to spend, let's say 5 minutes every half hour all day, 24 hours a day, that's obviously a myth.
No, when I first started, there was a discussion that, they said, well, Twitter is just live tweeting. And some people may have thought that, but I think things have evolved, and I think people realize that you can't be there all the time. It's like anything else. It's your emails. You go back in there and respond. If you respond within a couple hours in the day at the most, I think people are going to be okay. Nobody's come back to me and say, oh, okay, well, you didn't respond to me back in an hour, so you're no good. So we're just going to move on to somebody else. They're just reaching out, and I just think that myth doesn't do anybody any good, and it just creates a big hole for you to be able to climb yourself out of. Oh, I got to do this, I got to do that. We're wearing enough hats as entrepreneurs to be able to be locked into something like that.
So, Gary, what about tweet chats? And so chatting on Twitter, do you engage any of those, or what are your thoughts? And I asked this, Gary, because I know for a while I heard about it all the time. Like, everybody was saying, oh, you got to come check this out. And then all of a sudden I haven't heard about it as much. So I don't know if it's something that's fizzled or if it's just I'm out of the loop. But is that something you ever jumped into?
Oh, yeah. Well, I used to call mine Twitter Party.
Okay.
And it actually started out because it was my 5-year anniversary on Twitter. So I wanted to be able to do something to help celebrate and everything else. So what a Twitter party is, or a Twitter chat, it's a conversation wrapped around a hashtag. Hashtag is a pound sign in front of a word or series of words that helps. It's a search tool. And they were quite popular for a while. And that first Twitter party that I had, I did a 5-hour deal, which was kind of unheard of.
Wow.
But I got to be trending. I was the #1 trending topic an hour in, and stayed for about 5 hours after the party.
Amazing.
And so that was really amazing. But Twitter chats, I've helped other people do book launches where you're working around a topic or everything. There's a lot of good ones about people skills and leadership and social media marketing. There's still a number of them. They're not getting the publicity that they were, but that's another great way to be able to go find the conversations that you're interested in. Because I think what overwhelms people a lot is on Twitter is they see that all friends, the news stream, and you just see everything from everybody. And it's just like, being in a stadium, 100,000 people talking all at once. You can't possibly try to be able to keep up with all those conversations. But learning how to navigate and go use hashtags, use the searches to go find the conversations you want to have and participate in or learn from, that's going to allow you to be able to chat in those chats, share your thoughts. And remember, every tweet's an audition, so you're talking to everybody else in that room, and in a very casual way, you're making an impression upon all of those other people. And what it turns out, you make a good one, people are following you back, people are talking to you, you get invited to, hey, check out this chat, come on here, or I really liked what you said, and come on our show. And it just opens up a lot of possibilities.
So, Gary, I'd love to ask you as well about whether it's, you mentioned about, you shouldn't try to sell or talk about a product until you're at, say, 2,000 tweets and 2,000 followers. In terms of monetization, so monetizing Twitter, because that's another area I think people really struggle with. In terms of how, the best way to approach it and or at least what are some options for approaching it, when it comes to somebody saying, okay, I want to get in front of this person or say, check out this new product we just released, maybe after they've given a bunch of times first, what do you suggest as the best approach to, say, monetize Twitter or let people know products out so you don't come across as that person that's just sort of a pitch fest?
Well, there's a number of different ways. One of the things in advanced strategy I teach people for blogging, for example, is create multiple tweets for the blog. A lot of authors are going to fall in love with the title, but that title is only going to appeal to a small percentage of your possible audience. But if you look into your blog or using your presentation, your podcast, whatever it is, there's usually 5-6 points that are absolutely brilliant, and those same points solve a problem for somebody. So if we look at ourselves and write our tweets as problem solving, because one of the bottom lines is, most people are on the internet to be able to look for solutions to their problems. So if we write these things up, how to do this, top 10 secrets for that, or, what about this? And that will create a lot of interest. But along the way, you still have to be able to have that normal presence where you're enhancing the lives of people, or you're educating them, or you're entertaining them in a way that's not all about you, that you're there to be able to serve them. And then when you have a promotional piece, that you put it out there still in a way that's serving them. And it's only after you've done the other things that you build that trust and rapport that they're going to click and go check out what you're talking about next.
And so you mentioned about in terms of Twitter, the idea of sort of, I guess we'll say, bringing people into your circle, and the fact that, you don't have to be on there 10 hours a day or what have you. But with Twitter, I know one of the things that people say as well as a challenge is the fact that your tweet doesn't maybe have a long shelf life. So when you mentioned about being there and being consistent, is Twitter definitely one of those things where you can't just kind of go there and then disappear for 5 days and then come back for a day?
It's like networking. If you went to networking groups and you didn't show up for a month, you've lost that connection. You've lost that rapport with people, and you have to start all over. So having a daily presence is vital. And, it's just absolutely necessary. That's why you want to, that's why I started using automation, especially for my blog posts and all of those messages, because I couldn't keep up with being able to put them out. And for me, I had a hard time pressing the enter button on sharing my blogs. I wasn't selling anything, but it was just that trepidation. Like, it was a kind of, fearful. It's like, okay, well, is anybody going to like what I'm saying or anything else? So I just took that hesitation out and said, okay, let's just set up a queue and just set them up in automation where some of them go up, a few of them go out every day, and just let that out there. And that frees up the time, because I had, several clients that I worked with, is once we've done that with them, it frees up 20, 30 hours a month for them that they were scheduling or curating material to be able to tweet, that they could then be able to invest that time into having conversations. And that's the biggest part of Twitter is, again, that's kind of the tipping point, is you do a lot of these other things, but you want to create conversations and then invite them. It's like if you met somebody at a bar, right? So what's the next stage? You meet him at the bar. Okay, you want to go to Denny's, you want to go have coffee. You want to go to a movie next week or something. It's just stage selling. It's just move them a step at a time. And I think one of the things where people get in trouble on Twitter is that they're expecting, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to do this program and I'm going to expect people to be able to drop in a couple $100 first thing. Well, they don't know you. You don't have the trust and rapport. You haven't auditioned to anybody. And you're just coming across. That's why the 2000 is, you have to earn their respect first. And if you don't do that, then they're not going to click on anything, and then you're just going to ignore. Then you can be able to go out and say, yeah, well, I tried Twitter and it didn't work. It's like, okay, because you just started using it as a selling platform instead of a social connection and name recognition. And I'm a firm believer. One of the things that I learned from Bob Berg in his endless referral programs was that law of 250, that in life, everybody knows about 250 people who are going to show up to your wedding or funeral. So everybody you meet is the gatekeeper for at least 250 people in real life. But how many people are they connected to online? So if we have this approach there, I don't want to necessarily sell Corey something, but I want to be able to impress upon Corey that I'm a good guy, I'm trustworthy, I know my stuff, that when you run into somebody in your community who may need my help, you feel comfortable referring me.
So how about hashtags? You mentioned hashtags, you described them, Gary. In terms of, I think with the hashtag side of things, like everything else, people jump on and say, okay, well, I'm going to use this and I'm just going to use every hashtag I can find to draw people to me. but of course I know that has positives and negatives. What are your thoughts on use of hashtags and how to use them effectively versus just kind of throwing them out there?
Well, other platforms will either encourage you or lead themselves to for you to become a hash hole. And and what I'm really, and you can be able to leverage this in a couple different ways, but they've shown on Twitter that 2 targeted hashtags are most effective for readability and for people to click on to be able to go farther. Any more than that, your engagement rates go down dramatically. I think 2 hashtags, you get a 50% boost. And, with 1, it's only about a 17 or 20. When you go to 3, it goes back to about 15%.
Wow.
But one of the things that you can be able to do is if hashtags are the way for you to be able to tap into a lot of different conversations. So, if you've got a podcast and you're talking to, and your guest, reaches across 6 or 7 different topics, you may be tempted, okay, let's use all 6 topics to be able to do that. But, okay, why don't you create like 6 different tweets and use a different hashtag and slightly different words in there, so you can be able to reach people who are actually searching for those tools. On Twitter, it's a search tool. When I see people who will use that Instagram kind of mentality on Twitter, I'm just looking at it, it's like, okay, well, you just want any attention, for sunsets or scenery and all these other things. And it's like, I tend to look at it as, this is a search tool. So what are people searching for? And then do I want to be found? So if I have a pretty picture, I don't want to be found for scenery. I want to be found for marketing. And I may leverage the scenery to be able to get your attention, but you just want to be able to, what do you want to be found in? And another good thing too is, and this was a lesson that I sort of backed into, I mentioned before the just for today affirmations. Now, just for today is a reminder, these are just little things we can do every day. Okay, I feel that it takes 60 to 90 days to create a habit. So you just can't do it every day. So we just give ourselves a break and just a reminder, just for today, I'm going to do this. But that's a unique hashtag for me that I created, but nobody was searching for it. So I looked at it, okay, well, these are affirmations. So I added the second hashtag, affirmations. So it's hashtag just for today, hashtag affirmation. So now if people are searching for affirmations, what's the bigger conversation? And then I have an opportunity where I'm branding that just for today as my version of it.
How about cross platforms? So we talk about people that say, okay, I want to be in the big 3 or big 4. So whatever that is to them, but say Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Let's say that's the 4 for them. Right. So people want to be on all 4. They're also saying, but how do I make sure I'm active in all 4, and how do I get my message out in all 4? And so what I'm driving at here is what are your thoughts on repurposing so that you're sharing, let's say, a message about, let's say, the just for today thoughts. So maybe on Facebook you have that as a longer post and a picture with it, and Twitter you have it as a shorter one. Or I think sometimes people, what they try to do is say, okay, I'm just going to blast this out the same way to all 4. But I think it's safe to say that all 4 don't work the same way. They have different things that interest different people and different users and what have you. So what are your thoughts, Gary, on repurposing it, but also then customizing it for the platform itself?
Well, repurposing is essential because, again, one of the things is we never know, even a post that you wrote 6 years ago, it could turn out to be very impactful for somebody today. So if you don't repurpose that and keep those messages going out all the time, you miss that opportunity to be able to serve them. You can be able to manage all of those in Hootsuite. Hootsuite will allow you to be able to put on your free account, you can be able to put, I think, up to five different social sites. So your Twitter, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your Instagram, you can be able to put all those on. Now, I will suggest that if you just blast the same message to all 4 sites at the same time, which a lot of people do. And if I'm following you on all those sites, I'm going, okay, well, you just got pretty lazy and not very creative, that you're just putting the same messages out at the same time across there. I've just learned that you can be able to stagger those messages. And Hootsuite's, again, this is sort of one of these ninja tricks or something, is Hootsuite's got an auto scheduler. So it will go pick the times where the most people are going to be able to see your message. And I've just learned how to be able to stagger the message. So then I'll go in there and I'll put it in there and I'll say, okay, post it to Facebook and my Facebook business and LinkedIn and go there. But I've staggered them so that same message will go out days apart from the different sites.
Got it.
So with a little bit of strategy and strategic work on there, you can be able to build out, a couple of weeks or a month ahead on your promotional messages going out, that you don't have to sit there and get logged into it. And you got them spaced. That makes it look like you're more creative than what you are. But
love that. Gary, I'm down to the last I'll call it the last 3 questions. We used to call this the rapid fire round. As you can tell, none of my questions doesn't have them written out, and they're not the same questions I asked, somebody else an hour ago or what have you. But these 3 questions, I try to ask them when I can, when they come to mind. But what I like to do is I'm going to say customize them to the person and their situation. So in your case, I'm going to customize them to Twitter. And okay. I used to just simply ask the questions in general. But the first one is about passion. So I mentioned our radio show, Conversations with Passion. And so I love to talk to people and ask them that question about, do they think passion is important and why? And so in relation to Twitter, how I'll ask that question is, do you think it's important to be tweeting stuff you're passionate about? Or do you think it's just a matter of tweeting stuff that will impact other people?
Again, because we said this, it's a differentiation, a level playing field. And I think that if you bring in your own persona, that's going to give people a reason to build a bridge to come to you. So, if you find out, okay, I'm originally from Milwaukee, still love the Packers. So if I occasionally, tweet something about a Packer game or something out there, and somebody's watching and looking and say, hey, I love the Packers. I heard, one of the guys I worked with in the past, he's a big Star Wars fan. So we put Star Wars quotes into his stream. Now, he's a sales coach. But then again, it's like people were looking for that connection. So you can be able to extend your personality but without, opening up everything, but just allow people to be able to see some of your other interests. Because if I got together and talked with you, we're not going to talk about business all the time. We're going to try to look at things at, what are we interested in? Is it beach? Is it water? Is it, walking, biking? A lot of different things. And people are going to look for that. And that's what's going to be able to help them stay connected with you and then possibly refer you or invest with you.
How about success? How do you define success? And then I'm adding in the extra here on Twitter. So for you, when you look at let's say the journey you've had on Twitter now, from when you started until today, how do you define success for you on Twitter? And I realize it's different for everybody, but I'm just curious how you say, okay, you know what? I've been enjoying success on Twitter.
I just know that every day when I go look at the mention columns, that people are taking time to be able to ask me questions or make a comment about something that I shared with them. And I know that made an impact in their lives. I learned a long time ago, and this was, it's kind of a struggle, is I learned what my motivational DNA was. I'm an internal rewards person. You can dangle $1,000 bill out in front of me and it doesn't really push me that much. But if I know that I'm making an impact in people's lives, a positive impact in their lives, that's what gave me the juice and helped me keep going. And, I'm just fortunate that every single day I get messages like that. And, you learn along the way, how to be able to ignore the trolls, and because a lot of people will do things to be able to goat you into some kind of argument or take you off message. But again, it's like, 10,000 tweets to build a reputation and only one to ruin it. So it's like, I can share myself, but I have to be able to bite my fingers sometimes, because somebody will just say something that will just push a button that you want to explode. But it's like, okay, well, I don't want to alienate so many people that have worked so hard to be able to build this audience.
Now, what about advice? And this is probably a unique question in relation to Twitter, but I'm thinking of the experiences you've had, the journey you had. You've watched people make probably lots of mistakes on Twitter. You maybe fell down some manholes yourself. What advice would you give a younger Gary if you were sitting across from him, and let's say he's just starting Twitter today and you have the experience you have today? If you could tell him one or two things, here's what you should do first or should do, here's what not to do, what kind of life advice do you think you might give him?
I probably would have taken more chances faster. It took me quite a long time to be able to realize that my other life and business skills were transferable onto Twitter and the people I was going to connect with. I sat through so many presentations that were so bad and shared nothing, that it gave me the confidence that I can go out and I can be able to share things. And even unscripted, unrehearsed, I'm going to give you stuff that other people are going to charge you a lot for. I would have, I've just started doing videos. I started doing some Twitter video trainings. We're doing some live streaming ones, but I feel that I'm kind of late to the game, but I'm still ahead a lot. I wish I would have, when you hear about some of these new trends or where the market's moving, to be able to get started earlier on doing videos and go out there and just be able to realize it's like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but just get going and get started. Because I think people also look and want to be able to see your transformation, because that way they can be able to see how bad your first ones were and what you've grown into. So if you just come out and with a whole polished deal, then it's like, then it's not duplicatable. It's kind of an MLM kind of thing. It's like, oh, well, I can't do that. But if they can see you go through that progress. And so that's what I think. I would have just taken more chances and understood my gifts and my knowledge faster and jumped on trends when I heard about them coming.
It's funny, Gary, when you say that, a quote I used to share all the time, and maybe I'll have to reshare it again today now that you said it, or maybe tomorrow. But I used to always say when people said, what sort of sets you apart at any point in your career? And, I said, I don't know if I've done anything special, but I always chose to be first rather than perfect if I had to choose the two. And so, and when I say first, it doesn't mean I'm the very first in. It just means I took action rather than waiting.
And that's the one thing I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and especially, I work with a lot of people in the healing arts and everything else, and it's, they don't necessarily understand marketing, and you're going through, so there's that trepidation about doing that. But I just realized, it's like, again, I have to take my own advice, start out with the small weights and just do something and just build up. You're not running a marathon the first day that you're out here. Just go out there and do a little something, and say yes to every opportunity if somebody asks you to speak, or go ask people to speak with them on their shows. There's so many shows now and everything else, and there's more than enough opportunities for everybody to be able to get a seat and a camera or behind the mic to be able to share their story.
So one thing you mentioned there, Gary, and then I'll ask you my unofficial question. The last one is how we can connect with you and learn more. But before I go there, something you just mentioned, which I don't know why it just popped in my head this way, but I think it's a lesson for people as well. And you had mentioned, the idea of the fact that start early. And if you have the mistakes and the videos that maybe you're not as proud of, then people can kind of learn by that and say, you know what, if he could do it, and he was willing to put that out there, then I can do it. And what's interesting, I never thought about it this way until you said it, but John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire, he's, I think, I don't know the number now. Last time I was on the show, I was like episode 1297, and I bet she's probably at like 1800 or something now. But one of the things that's interesting is he still has his very first episode up, and every now and then I'll hear an interview where he says, if you want to go back and check my first episode, and he says, his own words, is that it's very, I'll say the nicest way to say it is he's not very proud of the episode, but at the same time, he's proud he took action. But what's interesting about what you just said is that he has one of his groups or programs is Podcasters Paradise, which I'm a member of. And in Podcaster's Paradise, the idea is teaching you how to start from scratch. And a lot of the people starting are not going to be where they'll end up being, not as polished and not at that level. And probably that probably helps, I would think, him bring people into that program when they know they can go back and listen to the guy that they're looking at now and saying, wow, imagine if I could be him, and know that less than 5 years ago, he did his first interview, and it was and he always says it's probably worse than your first will be, whoever you are. That's how little he thinks of that interview. But I think the idea that he still has it up and you can still listen to episode 1, it probably gives more people confidence because they say, look at the journey he's taken and I can see it in real time.
Yeah, no, I had a blog talk radio show, the exact same thing. You know, the first 3 shows, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was going to talk about. So there was a book that I was studying. So I just took a couple chapters each time out of the book and I just started rambling. And, you know, again, it's like that, you know, not selling on Twitter until you got 2,000 tweets or something else. It's just going to take you a little while to find your voice, find your rhythm, and going through there. And, you know, if we just allow ourselves that, you know, that little bit of wiggle room to be able to grow, because nothing that we've done, you know, as a baby, we didn't master walking the first time we tried it, but, you know, we kept trying and trying and trying and falling, and eventually we got to figure it out. And now we don't even have to think about it. So, you know, even like interviews like this, is like, you know, there was no prep questions. There was nothing in front of it. You know, I just knew, you know, we're talking about Twitter, we're talking about life and business. I know this stuff well enough, and it's just a conversation with 2 people that we've, you know, met for the first time visually, but we've known of each other for quite a while, and it just becomes just a natural extension of what to do next.
Absolutely, Gary. And on that note, like I said, I'll call it a to be continued, but I don't want to leave us off without people knowing how they can reach out and learn more from you. They may have heard a lot of stuff that they can use on Twitter themselves, but they may also be saying, but I still want somebody to either show me the ropes, or maybe they want to get, you know, maybe it's get access to a program that can walk them through, whatever that might be, or they might just want to reach out and say hi. Gary, where would you normally send them to connect with you further?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Gary Loper, GaryLoper. My website's GaryLoper.com. And so you can be able to look at there. Under the Twitter tab, I have all the Twitter articles on there. I have a Twitter ebook. I have a Twitter course. I provide done-for-you services as well. And if that's something that you're interested in, you know, just send me an email, Gary@GaryLoper.com, and then we can schedule a time to be able to talk about it, talk about the possibilities, and see if there's a good fit for us to be able to continue working together, that we can be able to help you become the master of your Twitterverse and be able to reach more people.